Okay.
It's not clickbait, it's click optimization.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for the pep talk.
Yeah. All right. Hello, and welcome back to How Many Podcast.
Welcome back to the pod.
Yes.
Very special guest today.
Yes, we have CK joining us. Second guest ever. Welcome, CK.
Thank you for having me.
CK is a general manager at Bitcoin Magazine and also an OG Bay Area Bitcoiner.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, one of the OGs from the meetup that Casey and I met at. Bay Area
Origin of Hell Money Podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
And we didn't know at the time, but that was all thanks to CK, who claims he had a very minor role, but at least had a minor role in the founding of the Bay Area Bitcoin meetup.
Yeah.
You know, everything that you do has an effect. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that something I did worked out to turn into this
Yeah,
podcast. And I'm a huge fan. I have to say, I think I texted Casey on Twitter since Erin's not on there, and I was like, yo, you guys are doing a good job and would love to come on. So thanks for having me.
No, high praise. I mean, we're a small pod, so it's super cool when our friends like what we're doing, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel like right now we're at such a good stage because it's just like friends and family.
The friends and family stage. Yeah, once we have to deal with the greater internet, right?
It's
like
over.
it's like,
yeah. Right now it's just like we make an episode, our friends are like, I watched your episode. Like, that's amazing. Can I come on?
Yeah.
It's a good stage, honestly.
Yeah, it's
I started a podcast and it was like pretty small, and then it got to like a medium size, and then we kind of went on and did our own things, but it's a lot of fun. So I appreciate where you guys are at right now.
Yeah, we both love to talk.
Yeah, we love to talk. We
satiates the desire to bloviate.
Yeah, but we were talking about, before we got on, we were talking about the Bay Area Bitcoiners meetup, and I think it's so cool that you said, like, after you started the meetup, it started to grow. Other people were like, oh, we're going to start our own meetup. You originally started it in San Francisco. And then other people were like, oh, we're going to start it in the South Bay, different meetups. And you're like, no, let's move to Bay Area Bitcoiners and we'll all have it be under the same umbrella.
Let's be inclusive.
Yeah.
No forking the group.
Yeah. I think that's great, because all of these small meetups would be just a little more isolated. Maybe I wouldn't have started going to the East Bay Bitcoiner meetup if I hadn't noticed that on the same event page as the SF Bitcoiner meetup, there's the East Bay one. So it's like, it's great.
No, I mean, I think the Bitcoin meetups need to stick together, and I think there's some really cool networks emerging, but Bay Area Bitcoiners is a really cool group, and Casey and I we're kind of part of the Bitcoin scene before COVID hit, but really it just completely reset because of COVID. So it's cool that you restarted BitDevs.
Well, that's all Alex Leishman. I had been every time. So Alex Leishman was the runner he ran the SF Bitcoin Devs.
Yeah.
And he would do it super irregularly. I think mostly just because he was super busy. And so
it was super consistent before.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then I would ping him at every time it would go more than a month that the meetup wouldn't happen. I'd be like, hey, let me know if I can do anything, help me have the meetup happen more. And then he was not going to be able to do the meetup at all anymore. And he was like, oh, I should see if Casey wants to take it over. And I was like, yes,
I'm glad he passed the torch.
Yeah.
What's up?
I'm just the caretaker of the SF Bitcoin Devs meetup. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that, There's a very low point in the Bay Area in terms of Bitcoin meetups, especially before.
It was a low point in the Bay Area in general with COVID.
Yeah,
it was
really
this sucks. We're all locked in our rooms. Nothing fun is going on.
I mean, that's a big reason I left, but I'm glad that things are on the up and up. And hey, coming back here for a little bit here in the summer, the weather is still the best. You can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Gas prices are high, but the weather and the vibes also high.
Yeah.
I honestly, I've lived in the Bay Area for almost 4 years now, and I pretty much hated living in the Bay Area until literally Bay Area Bitcoin.
Oh, really?
So I was everyone's so basic. Everyone has this very particular type of liberal progressive ideology, and not even I disagree with fundamentally with what a lot of people believe, but
just want a little variety,
a little free thinking.
I
love the free thinkers, love argumentative types. So it's just you were literally one of the first people I met at the meetup.
Free thinking argumentative type.
This fucking guy.
We can have many hour-long conversations and record them.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go.
Exactly. Yeah. It's cute. You know.
Yeah.
Well, gotta give a shout out. Meetups are awesome. And
meetups are awesome.
Find a meetup in your area.
Yeah, just go hang out with your friends. Go to a meetup. You're gonna meet people. If you go for a few weeks to the same meetup, all of a sudden, even if you haven't really talked to people a bunch, like you recognize them and it's like, oh, it's Bob. He comes to meetup. What's up? You know, yeah.
No, totally.
Definitely much better than talking to people on Twitter.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And on Twitter, you should only follow people that you have interacted with. That's my rule for Twitter, that I only follow people that I've interacted with.
I'm the opposite. I only like following people that I...
Yeah, you're like, with our account, you're like following like Elon Musk and like all these like figureheads.
I'm like, what's he up to?
Yeah. But if you only follow people you know on Twitter, it becomes a very cozy place. And turn off retweets so you don't see when they retweet people you don't know. And then you just see...
Oh, what? You can do that?
Yeah, it takes some work. But yeah, and then you can just see tweets from people you know. And it's like, it's a good place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hot tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like encourage following lots of plebs. My Twitter feed is a clusterfuck, but use the mute button. So I've recently done some muting. Sometimes
some hard decisions.
Yeah, like the most recent thing that's just annoying me is like people are like all of a sudden infatuated by the term touching grass. Like it's like a kind of a stupid old term. Like,
I follow so few people. I don't even know what that.
Like, I had to mute touching grass.
Touching grass, yeah. What is it? Is it used like that? Like what?
It's like you're out of touch with reality. You need to go touch some grass.
But like, is this
like you're too online?
Is this a general Twitter thing, or is it just a Bitcoin?
No, just Bitcoin Twitter, or maybe crypto Twitter. I don't know.
Well, I think it's
Who
like
needs
degenerates. Degenerates need to touch grass.
Okay.
That's what it's like. It's like ends up on crypto and Bitcoin Twitter because that's where the degenerates are. But it's like the idea that like. Yeah, like you're getting too caught up. You need to go touch some grass.
Right,
like just chill.
Yeah, everyone's like, it's summer. I'm on vacation. Look at my touching grass photo. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm not here for that. I'm here for some toxicity.
Yeah, you're like, what do you mean I need to touch grass? Like, why don't you go fucking die?
Like, that's cute. That's cute, but I'm here for Bitcoin, okay?
Yeah. I think it's definitely like, I feel like people who use that phrase are definitely projecting most of the time. Like, it's always the ones who need to touch grass the most. That tell you need to touch some grass.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm touching grass right now.
Yeah.
In the Bay Area.
Yeah, having some organic real life conversations.
Yeah, in person.
Yeah.
I'm only looking at my phone, but I'm not,
Yeah.
It's the camera.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the main topic because
how do we kick this off?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like
I mean, maybe
you seem like you're on a tiff right now. You're
mission,
doing your thing.
A mission, not a tiff, a mission.
Yeah, you're on a mission right now. People aren't bullish enough, basically.
But like, what does that mean that they're not bullish enough?
That's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean,
really,
we Bitcoiners need to hear this because they need to talk. Yeah, no, I've been like, I think we need to workshop this idea more. Like, I'm going to continue to push this idea and this mission forward. But it's like we need to keep thinking way bigger about Bitcoin because, like, in my opinion, when Bitcoiners talk about like infinity divided by 21 million, like. They're doing a very bad job of articulating what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
And when they talk about hyperbitcoinization, like, and then they like, I guess like when they talk about hyperbitcoinization and then they go back and they like refer to like how many Bitcoin they need or how many Bitcoin they have or the value of their current Bitcoin into the future, like there's like a pretty big mismatch from what I can tell.
Yeah.
So, I think like one, if you don't like know what you have and like appreciate what you have and what this thing is, you might make some pretty big mistakes. So it's like important to like appropriately, value this thing. It's important to be bullish enough,
right?
Because it's such a like.
But I mean, don't you still want people to keep stacking sats, right? You shouldn't like. I mean, the end, like it's hard to say when that end time horizon is like coming and things go crazy, right? So like,
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not doing a super good job of like articulating it, but like
the way I guess I'll chime in here. I feel like the stacking sats like approach of just like stack as many sats as possible. Like there's this disconnect that I see in Bitcoiners where it's like, they're like, I have no furniture, I have no wife, I live at home, I stack sats, when is my life gonna be amazing? And it's like, I think it's like this idea, it's a very like money, like it's like fiat money brain where they're like, there's a dollar amount. They're still thinking in dollars. They're like, there's a dollar amount.
And like not thinking about how, like, once that dollar amount gets big enough, things are going to be good. But not thinking about like, how is the world going to change between now and
fundamentally,
then?
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are helping me out here in terms of articulating.
We're workshopping.
No, absolutely. And I mean, but like, yeah, it's like I think Gigi, who is like a pretty prolific, thought thinker in the space. One of my favorite tweets he put out is like, the hardest thing is dropping the fiat mindset. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really hard to drop the fiat mindset. And then when you pick up like the hyper Bitcoinized mindset, like the way that you should be like thinking about your Bitcoin relative to that potential future, I feel like should be on a specific order of magnitude, and I just don't think that Bitcoiners are operating in that way. And like the way like the best way I can articulate it is that just like Bitcoin is going to be, if Bitcoin works, it's going to be so ridiculously valuable compared to what it is today. That like we can't, like, it is impossible for us as humans to conceive of it. And the reason why it is going to go beyond our wildest imaginations is that if it works, it is like this fundamental step change, this fundamental upgrade on how the world organizes. And like when you like, go about all the macroeconomic talks about like what's wrong with the world today, like you start to understand that like we are being held back by government-controlled money.
Right. So like taking everything in the world and dividing it by the amount of Bitcoin, that is not nearly bullish enough, because that's using the same amount of stuff as we have now.
Yeah.
Whereas Bitcoin unlocks the productivity growth in the numerator, right? You have the right denominator, you don't have the right numerator.
I think, it's like, I feel like there's like a little bit of a, to use like, basic bitch energy vibes, where it's like abundance versus scarcity mindset about hyper-Bitcoinization. Like I feel like there's like the rebranding from like scarcity mindset to abundance mindset. Currently we're like, I need to stack as many sats as possible so that I can make it. Like, it's like this idea that like, there's only 21 million Bitcoin, but there's like 50 million millionaires or something. And I need to like be above this level so that I can be above whatever level post hyper-Bitcoinization. And I think like a better way to think about it is like, Bitcoin's gonna happen and it's gonna be like a great world once Bitcoin is the thing. It's not necessarily about like this, like, I need to make sure that I make it in this like very specific kind of like, there's going to be this grand reckoning and everything's going to be washed out, like, and only the Bitcoiners will survive. That kind of, I like that way of framing it. It's like, ideally people that are like pre-coiners, no coiners or whatever are also going to have their life improved by like a hyper Bitcoin.
Even if you have zero Bitcoin, you want to be in that hyper Bitcoinized world.
Right. Because it like redefines value. Like, right now, the way that we think about like store of value is all this like diversifying assets. Like, you need to own a home, you need to own assets, because we have no way of storing value. And so we like store value in all these strange proxies. These proxies for value that like don't really make sense. And I think like if we didn't do that, like there's so many, it is hard to, I give people credit because it's like, it is hard to conceptualize. It's not like I can like say like, this is exactly what's going to happen. Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think it fundamentally changes like how we think about value on like a global scale, if it works.
Yeah. Right? And like, I think that's the key too, is like, when I think through like likely scenarios for Bitcoin, is like, you always hear like people who are Bitcoin skeptics, a lot of them are altcoin believers. They'll say like, well, what if this doesn't work out? Or like, no one is using it and then the block reward goes to 0. And the reality is like, it's going to die. I think that Bitcoin, I really do believe that like the most likely scenario is either Bitcoin succeeds, the incentives work, or the incentives don't work, something else emerges. Maybe we all just like become,
bug
censored
people.
And bug people and cucked. Like, who knows?
Like somebody else is fucking our bug person wives.
These are potential scenarios that play out. But like, what is an unlikely scenario to me is like Bitcoin manages to survive, but is irrelevant and no one uses it. Or it
survives. Allocate 30% of their portfolio into Bitcoin.
Like, I just don't think that that's a super realistic scenario.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so if you're going to prepare, then you either prepare for Bitcoin 0 or infinity divided by Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, so like how should you assess this infinity divided by Bitcoin scenario? And I just think like no one's even thinking about it.
I mean, it's
that magnitude.
We're thinking about it.
It's comprehending the mind of God, right? It's on like a different level, you know.
It is. Well, it's like an evolution in like human consciousness. Like it is like
that's the whole thing.
Like
though.
Another.
That's the whole point of Bitcoin.
Right.
It is an evolution of human consciousness.
It's like, but it requires like some visionary thinking. I think to be able to even like conceive of what that would be. To me, like on a personal level, preparing for Bitcoin to 0 or preparing for Bitcoin to infinity is the same answer for me, which is doomsday prepping.
Well, that's the funny thing is
because I think even when assuming I am very idealistic. I actually think we're headed towards a hyper-Bitcoinization. I don't think we're headed towards a Bitcoin 0, and I do like believe ultimately in the future and that like there will be prosperity, all these sort of things, abundance mindset, as I said.
Yeah.
But I think like with that territory comes like a period of tumultuousness and like chaos.
Hyper-Bitcoinization could be dark.
Until it...
Well, getting to hyper-Bitcoinization.
From here to hyper-Bitcoinization.
I'm not arguing against that.
No, right.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Like,
well, so this is why it's important to be bullish enough on Bitcoin in the hyper-Bitcoinization scenario, and then 2, of all the assets, of all of your resources, like you need to allocate those resources appropriately to get to that end state, right? Yeah. So it's like, hey, like I think like the I'm gonna stack and sell everything and own nothing and only stack as many sats mentality. Like for me, that's like, okay, I'm gonna go camping and I'm gonna get the biggest bag of water possible. Like I'm gonna fill this. It's like, okay, I'm glad that you have a lot of water. Water is gonna be super valuable in the future at the end of this journey. But you need a lot of other stuff to get across the finish line.
100%. That's why I'm saying like it's the same. Like I'm a doomsday prepper regardless. Like it's like I'm like a prep. I have that kind of like mentality.
I do think a lot of Bitcoiners need to prepare. Like for a lot of Bitcoiners, your sats are not enough, and you need to be a prepper. Like you probably need guns and bullets. You probably want to have like other bearer instruments like gold. You probably want to have some reliable
fiat. You might not be on the network to be able to transact Bitcoin. Right? You need some silver rounds to like get where you're going,
whatever. I mean, or in Bitcoin 0 scenario, maybe you want some specie. Who knows? Like whatever. Like you probably on the Bitcoin case, like you probably want to spend a decent amount of money on your cold storage setup. You probably want to spend a decent amount of money on your inheritance planning because like the incremental value of adding more sats to your massive stack of sats in a hyper nice future is probably not as high as like preparing those sats to even make it across the finish line.
I completely agree.
So one, you gotta you need to value the Bitcoin you already have a lot, and then 2, you need to understand how effing hard it's going to be to get across the finish line of like this craziness.
100%.
So it does require prepping.
Yeah. So
so things are gonna get wacky. Like here's an example.
There's no way you disrupt the world order without things
No. One thing I was just thinking about is like, okay, maybe a way that a not bullish enough Bitcoiner thinks about hyper-Bitcoinization is they go, okay, well, like all the stocks are going to be priced in Bitcoin, right? Like the S&P 500, all of that stuff is going to be priced in Bitcoin, right? But okay, like why do those markets even exist? Why is there so much investment in those markets? Well, it's because we don't have a way.
We don't have a store of value.
Yeah. If you have a true store of value, you don't actually need to invest in the stock market because the growth of the reason stock markets grow is increases in like productivity and investment, et cetera, right? And your Bitcoin increases in purchasing power as what it can buy gets more and more valuable. So maybe we see like a sort of a collapse of the vast amount of investment in the stock market. Investing in the stock market is back to being like a more specialized activity that you do when you have real alpha. Yeah. Not when you're just trying to ride market beta.
Not when you just have a 401k because that's the only option for saving for retirement.
And then everybody else just has their stack and they know that they can buy what these like increasingly valuable companies are producing with their Bitcoin. And that's like a super wild like scenario that like most Bitcoiners, that's like much orders of magnitude crazier than the like, oh, all the stocks will just be priced in Bitcoin, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, so one is like, okay, there's the prepping to get to hyper-Bitcoinization, but the two is like, how big is Bitcoin going to be in a hyper-Bitcoinization scenario? So I'd say like one, I really like this article by Parker Lewis, which is Bitcoin is the great definancialization. The whole idea is like financialization is like, you could call it technological innovation to solve for the lack of store of value in the fiat system. So like, here's the fiat system, store of value is completely broken within it, and now there is a market incentive to solve for that, and we get financialization, mostly out of New York and London. Right? And like, that's, like, it's a technological innovation to solve for store of value problems. So,
like, essentially, how do we, some people have fiat, and they want to figure out how to stop that fiat from evaporating.
Yeah, and the market is offering solutions to that. Like, because there's this huge demand. Well, guess what? Bitcoin disrupts that completely. So, like, Bitcoin is the definancialization because, like, all of this complexity, all this financialization is going to just get completely disrupted by 21 million.
It's not necessary anymore.
Another reason that the financial industry exists is because there are all these money spigots, right? It's
so
not
it
just
helps to get close to the money spigot.
You want to try to get close to the money spigot, right? And that isn't something else that goes away. Like, who cares about the money spigot shooting dollars out in a hyper-Bitcoinized world?
Well, I mean, in a hyper-Bitcoinized world, like, let's just call it like the compass of value goes towards where real value is created. Right. Which is, again, as I'm saying, it's humanly impossible. Like, Bitcoiners need to get really effing humble. It is humanly impossible to be bullish enough on Bitcoin if it works. If hyper-Bitcoinization happens, Bitcoin is the communication layer for value. It is the substrate in which all value is communicated and denominated in. It is humanly impossible for us to be bullish enough because it is going to become that because it's improving on what we're already doing. But two, it's going to unlock value because it's going to point us to where value is created because there's no more Cantillon effect. There's no more financialization. There's none of this additional complexity.
And for people who don't know, the Cantillon effect is the benefit that people who are close to the money spigot get from being closer to the money spigot than anybody else. So getting those dollars that get pumped in the system before anybody else gets those dollars. Yeah,
I feel like there's so many various aspects. Like, I mean, obviously, like the stock market, like so many people just park their money there just because they have no alternative store value option.
Real estate.
Exactly. I was going to say housing market. How many apartments are empty just because people need somewhere to park money? Basically,
double digits in New York. It's like I don't even know the exact number, but it's double-digit percentage of New York apartments are empty.
And this is financialization. Why, like, I feel like coming from like more of a like doomy sort of, like, I came from kind of more of a doomsday prepper's perspective into Bitcoin, being like, oh, this could actually, like, I felt very negatively about like how like the current world was going, and then I was like, wait, this actually could be like a new paradigm that emerges that like could fix a lot of things. And I feel like there's so many, especially like young leftist types that are like, the housing market crisis is so bad, like I hate the stock market, I hate financialization, and they're just like, oh, but Bitcoin is just like part of that. And it's like, no, dude. Like, the best part is that those finance guys don't realize that Bitcoin is like gonna destroy what they do. And they're just like, oh, it's an asset. I'll just buy it because it's gonna go up and I'm gonna make some fiat money off of it. And it's like
Trojan horsing everywhere.
Yeah, it's great. It's like harnessing human greed. Like,
I used to not like regulatory capture. Regulatory capture is when like the very regulators that are supposed to be regulating an industry get like captured by the industry and start like regulating for that industry. I used to not like it. Now I'm kind of a fan because I see Bitcoin regulatory capture, right? Like politicians right now are stuffing their socks with Bitcoin. And the regulation is going to be real friendly going forward.
Well, I mean, again, like, so like that's, but the thing is Bitcoin is different than everything else. Like Bitcoin is like, and when people, and again, I would say like one of the things that pisses me off and makes me say that Bitcoiners are not bullish enough, like when you see Peter Todd talking about tail emissions. Like, first of all, Peter Todd sold half of his Bitcoin when Ghash got to 50% of the hash rate. So, like,
that was a big event when like, briefly a mining pool in 2017, was it?
No, I think it's 2016.
2016, yeah. One mining pool named Ghash briefly got above the 51% threshold.
And he sold half of his Bitcoin. So, I mean, like, I guess, no offense, Peter Todd, you know, you've had some great contributions to Bitcoin and stuff, but like, you know, one, you don't know, like, Bitcoin is purposely like not fragile to these type of attacks, which is you doubting the incentive system. Two, it's like you shouldn't be trying to change the incentive system because if you were bullish enough, it's gonna work.
Right.
And if it's not gonna work, it's fucked. Okay, like let's move on. Prepare for another scenario. It's like, but like if you are trying to add tail emissions to Bitcoin, like that to me that proves that you don't even get the experiment that's happening.
I actually like it when people talk about adding tail emission to Bitcoin, because I think it makes people think about, people need to come up with arguments for why we don't need to. They need to think hard about the alternative
Can you
case.
explain tail emissions for the audience and the less
totally.
knowledgeable podcast?
Sure. Yeah. So Bitcoin has a block reward.
Okay.
Every block, a block subsidy. Every block, the subsidy, new coins equal to the subsidy are created, and the miner takes them. That subsidy started out at 50 Bitcoin per block in the first block. And every 4 years, that subsidy is cut in half.
Right.
So 50, 25, 12.5, 6.25.
Today.
Yeah, we're at 6.25 today.
Yeah.
And this is going to continue.
Right.
And so the subsidy is going to basically drop off to nothing.
Right.
The subsidy is going to go to zero, or it's going to go to economic...
Nothing in Bitcoin terms.
What's that?
Nothing in Bitcoin terms. Very little in Bitcoin terms.
Right, but I mean, eventually it's going to be 1 sat per block. Right, for the last 4 years of the subsidy period, we're now a 4-year period where we have 1 sat per block. I mean 2136 to 2140. Oh, you know the years.
Yeah, I know the years.
Yeah, very nice.
So there you go.
So some people speculate. I mean, because currently miners also get the fees.
Yeah.
Right. And currently, the subsidy is a much larger proportion of the total block reward than the fees. So there's speculation that if the block reward drops too low too quickly, that fees will not be enough to compensate the miners to secure the network.
Sure.
And that if fees are too bursty, there's various ways that this can go wrong. But basically, that because of this declining subsidy, we need to add a perpetual inflation. We need to add perpetual inflation to Bitcoin, scrap the 21 million limit.
Tail emission?
And that's tail emission.
Okay.
Because it's emission, it's this long tail emission.
You get to a point where it just there's
Instead
a
of
flat
leveling up
line
to
you're
zero,
mining.
it levels off
exactly.
So Monero just added this. Like Ethereum doesn't have a cap. There's tail emissions. They're like we're gonna game theory incentivize deflation. They're doing all this stuff. So again sure, but my main take on Bitcoin block rewards is that fundamentally proof of work is useful as a consensus mechanism. It actually creates objective truth in Bitcoin and time in Bitcoin that refers to itself. It's self-referential, so it's a closed system. But then on top of that, outside of it, it's actually extremely useful for grid balancing. And it's extremely useful as both an energy buyer of first resort and last resort. So by saying miners are not going to mine it in 100 years from now because block rewards are trending to zero, to me that's saying also proof of work is not a fundamental innovation in how we manage electricity. It's also saying that also people aren't going to use this monetary system. Right. It's saying that also I don't understand that the block rewards are extremely finite and that less than 0.1% of humanity is leveraging Bitcoin today, and that's the reference point in which you're checking the state of the network and then trying to forecast the future. So it's just you're not taking any of these things into account, and then if you think that hyperbitcoinization is going to happen and that the whole world is going to settle on Bitcoin, how could you come to the conclusion that that there's
going to be so
how can you come to this conclusion that we need tail emissions? You are not bullish enough. Or guess what? The incentives are broken and it's going to die. You should prepare for another snenario. It's just his scenario where he would even bring up the idea we need tail emissions to save this thing today. It just shows to me I just don't understand his forecasting in the future. It just doesn't make any sense to me. As a developer, am I wrong here?
I tend to think that you're right. I tend to be a little bit more moderate in the sense that I do think there's going to be hyperbitcoinization. And the reason why I don't think that we need to worry, The reason why the declining subsidy will not be a problem will be because there is so much demand for block space. There's so much demand for block space, for Bitcoin block space, that the fees that are paid are going to be super high, and they're always going to be high, and they're going to be larger than the current block rewards. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think that's
that has to be inherent for finite block space and hyperbitcoinization, right?
Yeah,
that's inherent.
Yeah. But I do think that it is worth thinking about how to create those buyers of first resort and last resort for block space, right? And so that's why I'm like, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think the reason it's not going to be a problem is because of demand for block space. But I think it's really good for us to all think about how to create that demand for block space. I think a lot of it is going to come from Bitcoin. For example, like Lightning is a great example of that. Like when the fees when the fees are relatively low, everybody is going to be like, oh, let's open channels, let's close channels, let's rebalance channels, right? So all those different consumers of block space are going to contribute to why things are going to be okay. So it's like, we kind of don't need to worry about it. I can see the path for everything being okay, and we should work on making that path happen. And it doesn't require inflation. It doesn't require a perpetual mission.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you said, and I think urgency is super important, and not resting on your laurels is super important.
Yeah.
But it's also super important to be even remotely directionally correct on your forecast.
Right. Yeah.
And it's okay, we have 4 megabyte blocks based on block weight. Is that how's that work?
It's confusing. So we have a 1,000 V-byte limit. We have a 4 million weight unit limit.
Okay.
But each transaction, different parts of one transactions are worth different amounts of weight units.
Okay.
So most of the transaction, each byte is worth 4 weight units.
Okay.
So by that metric, we could have 1 megabyte of transactions in a block.
Okay.
However, witnesses, which are the things that say hey, this is why I'm allowed to spend this previous coin.
Yep.
Those are worth 1 weight unit. So we can have each byte of witness data is worth 1 weight unit. So we could have 1 megabyte of non-witness data per block, or 4 megabytes of witness data per block. And the reason is that witness data, you verify it and then you throw it away.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But the rest of the transaction, like the outputs that it creates, for example,
Yep.
those you have to hold on. Those
Yep.
are new coins. You have to track those.
Yep.
So we sort of want to encourage more witness data, more spending of coins, more consolidation, and discourage the creation of outputs that are going to make the UTXO set bigger.
Yep.
So in practice, it winds up that we have a 2.4 megabyte block size limit.
That makes sense.
And
ultimately, SegWit. Again, I'm not super technical, and I know that there's people who have
SegWit
philosophical...
because this weight limit thing, it came from SegWit, which was segregated witness, split blocks into witness data and non-witness data.
Yes. Yeah. So, but long story short, and I'm not trying to get in a philosophical argument.
No, let's get into philosophical.
About soft forks. No, I'm just not the right person. I would be speaking out of my ass. But long story short, I think it is an example of hey, given specific constraints, humans can innovate to get more efficient, and that's but long story short is we are so without anything, we have limited block space, and we are at less of 0.1% of total adoption.
Right.
So
why are
baseline. Why are we even talking about anything else? That's the only thing that matters for for fee go up. In any way some sort of increase on the adoption side.
Right.
Which I think we're actually on a decently fast clip. And you look at Bitcoin as a brand, Bitcoin as a movement, Bitcoin as an ideology. All of these things are accelerating very, very fast.
Well, it helps that everything else is also blowing up around Bitcoin.
Well, and I say this too, hey, telephony beat out telephone lines without telephone lines shooting themselves in the foot. Bitcoin is a fundamental upgrade to government-controlled money, and it's going to beat them. And despite the fact, and it's being assisted by the fact that they are also shooting themselves, they're self-sabotaging themselves. Because again, this is automated coordination versus, state coordination.
Yeah, and
DMV coordination.
Why don't we like the state is because they make driver's license. You have to go into the DMV, which is the worst place on earth. And you think these people who can do no better than the DMV office can stop Bitcoin? No fucking way.
again, no one is bullish enough,
not knowing what it is, and then they'll blow up their own situation.
Yeah.
So the state is state-run money is DMV level coordination of money is self-sabotaging itself in the wake of the invention. Of automated money.
And DMV can't exist if there was a decentralized alternative that people could just go to. Why would anybody go to the DMV?
Not even decentralized, just something that works.
Right.
And something that works way better than anything that came before it. So it's just these debates about Bitcoin. It's just what the F are we talking about? Is hyper-Bitcoinization going to happen or not? And then again, what's the likelihood of it happening?
Right.
Most likely, don't try to change Bitcoin. Just prepare for Bitcoin failure. Assure yourself that you're going to be okay in that situation.
Yeah.
And then in the Bitcoin win scenario, how much Bitcoin do you need to win? You actually don't need that much.
No.
You can do any sort of just straight linear math of whatever existing wealth divided by whatever percentage of the Bitcoin network you already own, project that into the future, increase that by an order of magnitude to take away your bias for not being bullish enough. Figure out how wealthy you'll be in Bitcoin.
You should probably not add that extra multiple.
Okay, everyone, 2 orders of magnitude, and then for me, a single order.
But I think it is
I don't know. It's impossible for me to be bullish.
Even thinking about it that way of how much Bitcoin do I need? It's I do feel it's still this it's this fiat brain thing or something where it's you need to have this stack that you sit on, and then that's somehow going to translate to value in your life. Right. And it's just because we have a way of if we have a good way of storing value, I think that can create human flourishing. You can have a system that is not rigged the way that it's rigged currently that overinflates housing prices because it's a store of value. So you can't buy a fucking home and have a family and have a life, it's I think thinking about it as stacking sats so that you can then become the king in the next system where now you're not the king. It's you gotta switch your mindset, bro.
I
not
agree.
Bullish enough.
Yeah. I agree with that, but we need incremental steps. Again, another Parker Lewis quote is that Bitcoin is counterintuitive and then it's hyperintuitive. And the way that I just like to describe that is Bitcoin's actually an operating system. So we are all baseline indoctrinated into this fiat operating system. People that are successful in the existing world are successful under the fiat operating system. So the whole what's happening right now is the world slowly transitioning to the Bitcoin operating system, and all of us are on some sort of point on that transition. But when you start thinking in Bitcoin, even though we're not, any of us are even natively thinking in Bitcoin fully, that's when it becomes hyper-intuitive. But that's why it's so hard for people to see it on the flip side. Because it's you actually have to change the lens in which you see the world.
Well, and you have to believe that you're going to beat the people that want to make you a bug man. You know what I mean? You have to believe that there's a world beyond
and you gotta
the government wants to do this to me and I'm going to defy it by owning Bitcoin. It's no, if Bitcoin wins, there's not going to be that power system.
And not just that we're going to avoid the bugman fate.
No.
We're going to transcend.
Transcend
it's
the
optimistic.
Bugman yes. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is why I say and maybe my phrasing of we need to get more bullish is not, maybe that's not the right phrasing.
I like it because it's actually very astrologically relevant.
Oh, what's the astrological relevancy?
Well, we're it's Uranus and Taurus. There's a lot of Taurus stuff going on. Taurus is the bull. So I like the idea of you need to be more bullish.
Right.
We all need hard money. That's
and how does this relate to Bitcoin's natal chart?
Not Bitcoin specifically, but what we're going through right now, the financial restructuring.
Right.
Not to, we already had an astrology episode. I don't want to derail it, but I like the bullish.
Look, you guys, not only, I'm trying to make maybe logic arguments. Maybe I'm not even doing a good job of using logic here. I'm trying to.
Well, it's hard.
But I like that it's also astrologically backed. I'm glad that they're
my
both.
astrologic.
I mean, one of the big reasons why I've been really harping on this is we are potentially hitting this Bitcoin bottom of capitulation in our Lehman Marcus moment with Three Arrows Capitals and all these lenders and stuff like that. And I just want to tell people
it's fine.
We need to be bullish right now. Guys, if you are worried, you're not even close to thinking about this thing in the right frame at all.
Again,
this thing is not just some other asset. This thing's not just some whatever cryptocurrency. This thing is not just some whatever there's going to be a next thing. Like, this is the thing. The world is going to completely reorganize around this thing. And if it does, given the current constraints of the thing, like, let's like appropriately forecast. Like, is anyone modeling like with any sort of reason? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure you can't. Yeah, it's like...
I want some economists to take it seriously and be like, let's think about this. Like
economists.
No, but I don't mean economists. I don't mean like I don't mean like
have anyone take it fucking seriously.
I mean somebody who's going to think from a global, people who think about a global economic mindset. You know what I mean? Not the fucking suits.
Like, Casey, is there anyone on the planet taking this thing seriously enough?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. Yeah.
If you're bullish enough, you would be, but obviously none of us are.
I mean, Plan B is pretty bullish. Unfortunately, he's bullish because of the stock to flow model, which is just really stupid, like just like embarrassingly dumb.
Yeah, no, it's not good to be bullish for the wrong reasons. The right reasons are Bitcoin's incentives, Bitcoin's proof of work in this world, looking at what's happened in the globe, and then the inherent scarcity about literally every element of Bitcoin. Like, that's the only framework to look at it. But the existing system is utterly broken in ways that we can't even articulate. Central bankers can't even articulate it. They're arguing about it, and they're recording themselves discussing about it, and if you look in hindsight, they're all objectively wrong all the time. That's the whole effing problem. We can't say if it's inflation, deflation, whatever. It's just a complete clusterfuck. Like, that's the whole point of Bitcoin, is it's like
wipes
clean.
clean.
Yeah, definancialization, no more mud, no more scum, no more BS. And like, it's something to build off of. And like, if human beings are going to do what they do, like, we're going up, baby. And this thing is inherently scarce. Like, this thing is inherently useful. This thing is going to create more productivity. So like, you got to take that into your model. Like, and I just don't think that anyone's doing it right.
Yeah, we got to lift the vibe.
Yeah.
We got to be more optimistic.
And I like the vibes because like, it's so cosmic, it's so like freaking galaxy brain that the only way to really get on with it is like accept that it's just a vibe and we can just go along with it, right?
Yeah. I think it is like, I mean, what I said earlier, like elevation of human consciousness. I think it is like, it's like a new like thing that, we just can't necessarily conceive of in like the state that we're in right now, but ideally we like look back and we're like, damn, like, okay, we went, we really went through it there. But I guess, we're talking a lot about like people are not bullish enough, they're not preparing, whatever. Like, what is preparing for hyper-Bitcoinization? Is it just like, good
what
vibes,
does a person do?
Like, what does that actually
I think it takes a lot of
tangibly
humility.
Yeah.
Like, it starts from a place of like enormous, like it's just like trying to understand the gravity of this thing,
and not just like number go up, right?
And trying to understand like where the world is at and like where the world needs to go. Like, and like it's just it's insane, right? Like, and just be humble to that and know that like most likely you're not positioned well. Like, and it's just difficult to like tell where, like, no one is, right? Who is positioned well for COVID in Canada or Australia or Singapore? Like, who is positioned well for that? Like, we have like the road to like hyper-Bitcoinization is paved with clowniness, like left and right. It's like, who is positioned? So it takes an enormous amount of humility to know that like this phase change is going to be insane. So like, are you prepared for just like anything?
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's like, kind of crazy to like have to do that.
It's like personal health. It's like optimism and like
flexibility.
Community for
community,
sure.
Really.
Yeah.
Is your family ready?
Yes.
Like, are your kids like, hardened? I don't know.
Yeah.
Where did you get Erin was saying that you had the 37 sats as generational wealth.
Oh yeah.
Is that it? Where does that come from?
Well, again, this is like, it's not humanly possible to be bullish on Bitcoin. 37 sats is the block reward in like, I think it's 98 years, 97 years. I don't remember exactly, but I tried to hit 100 years, but I like was looking at the chart and I picked the wrong one and just decided to go with it. So it's like 98 years from now. But that's going to be the block reward, which means that if Bitcoin works, that there's going to be an enormous amount of human like energy and real energy and just an enormous amount of like the globe's potential is going to be harnessed into mining for those 37 sats every 10 minutes. So if Bitcoin works, odds are that's going to be generational wealth versus it's not. So again, it's I don't know, like
it's a way of framing.
I'm really bad at like trying to articulate how bullish we need to be. I'm just like freaking throwing darts at the wall.
Yeah, you're trying
that's one of my darts. It's like, all right, let's just pick a block reward in the future. Yeah. Like if Bitcoin works, this is going to be an enormous amount of value.
Yeah.
And even, like that's like nothing today.
Even the symbolic value of mining the block reward, right? Getting that 37 sat output, right? And controlling that output, right? That's an indication that you mined that block.
Yeah, you know? Which is probably going to be an enormous human feat.
Yeah.
If you can, you are competing at that level.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's all about being humble and like understanding that the world's going to change a lot. It's like, okay, so you're worried about the block reward in 2140, sorry. Like I snickered a little bit. But, okay, how about the people right before World War II? Do you think that they're worried about any of our problems, or they could even forecast remotely closely like what would be dealing with today?
Yeah.
Like maybe one person kind of got it right ish.
You
know, none of us are like none of us get it. Like we're all so off, and you have to be humble to that. Like none of us are even close to like getting like being on point with all of the assumptions that are necessary to be on point with forecasting what the world is going to look like when Bitcoin gets to that point.
Yeah.
It's either the freaking incentives work or they don't.
Yeah. I want people to pull back on to like just like a larger timeline. This is also like a little like galaxy brain, but like I noticed recently that, you know, the block reward, the halving, right, comes every 210,000 blocks, right?
Yep.
And the difficulty adjustment comes every 2016 blocks.
Okay.
And normally they don't happen on the same block.
Ooh.
They go at like different. The difficulty adjustment doesn't happen on the halving. They're not synchronized.
Yeah.
Except every 6 halvings. Every 6 halvings or every 24 years, the halving and the difficulty adjustment.
So we're halfway there.
Yeah, we're halfway there. Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Only halfway into Bitcoin's first. Like the first of this like long-term periodic cycle. Yeah. Those are the real cycles, the conjunction of the halving
I like that.
and the block reward. Okay. And that's the long-term, like let's be a little bit more long-term about the system.
Like let's not even evaluate its incentive structure until we at least get to that point.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta go through the first cycle.
Yeah, right.
You know, shut the fuck up about your tail emissions. Like, shut the fuck up about worrying about the fees. Like, you know, all the ETH heads who are like, oh my god, Bitcoin has no fees. I'm like, no. You can't scale, and you have no chance of getting. You have no chance of getting to any remote like resemblance of of like mass adoption. Not even a chance.
Yeah.
So again, it's really bad to not have the right forecasting. You could allocate all of your assets incorrectly if you cannot forecast this stuff, even remotely logically. Like, guys, I'm not smart. Like, I was a comm major, okay? Like, you know, like, my wife jokes around that English is my second language. Like, I'm really not smart. I promise you. Like, I'm not a freaking, like, quant. I got none of this. And I'm talking about, like, real basic assumptions when modeling. Like, when forecasting, I'm not even using a computer or nothing. Like, I'm not doing a regression. I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm just applying just straight, rational, assumptions to like what's happening.
How badly Ethereum prioritizes things, right? Like, I mean, like one thing that is really bad on Ethereum is custody. Is Ethereum does not have native multi-sig. You have to do these like weird contracts. It doesn't have like time locks, right? It has all these like issues, right? And it's like they're not prioritizing the right thing if they're not fixing that. If this is going to be the world's money, like, and there's not like a good way to do like threshold multi-sig, right? As you can do, as is built into Bitcoin and is constantly getting better and better. Like, what are you even doing, right? Is focusing on the fees the right thing if you can't even like really secure the bag for this like future in which it's incredibly valuable?
I think it's hard. Like, I feel like the types of intelligences that are primed to like solve these sort of technical problems are not usually the same like big picture thinkers or like societal, philosophical, political level thinkers. Right. And I feel like that's a huge problem is like, it's like, I don't know, if you're not able to think about it on like a larger time scale, on a societal scale, on a political scale, then you're not thinking about the question correctly at all.
You know who wasn't bullish enough? Satoshi. One of Satoshi's famous like comments was, the state is like bad at cutting off the heads of decentralized system. Like Bitcoin will at least buy us a territory of freedom for a few years. And it's like,
aww,
bro, think big, you know? Yeah. Even Satoshi was like, maybe not bullish enough.
I mean, the amount of information, granted, I think like it's easier to be appropriately bullish now than it was back then.
Totally.
So I give Satoshi. He does have some.
You're
very
not going to go as far as to knock Satoshi.
It's humanly impossible to be bullish enough. Mm-hmm. So given his context, he had a lot of wins. Mm-hmm. He was directionally correct.
Directionally correct.
Yeah. But like, okay, I don't know if this is even a good line. Like, I'm not that much of a studier of Nikola Tesla, so I'm sure that some of the fanboys will come out and murk me. But like, Nikola Tesla, in my opinion, like, he's probably most famous for being like slightly directionally correct on being bullish enough on electricity.
Right.
Like, that's probably, okay, let's compare him to the average person of the time. Okay, so he was the only one.
Yeah.
So like the only one in the whole planet that was bullish enough on electricity. So like, we're there right now.
Yeah, right.
So like, there's probably someone who's like connecting the dots and is bullish enough, but it's not us.
Right. Yeah.
This reminds me of like, the average person thinks they're above average driver. It's like the average Bitcoiner thinks they're the above average bullishness or the appropriate level of bullishness.
Right.
None of us are.
Right. Yeah.
And it's impossible for the average driver to be above average.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're average.
100%.
And I'll admit that I am a below average driver.
Damn, this is gonna be fired up. I'm feeling fired up about the future of Bitcoin. Like,
but it's like hard to conceptualize because it's positives and negatives. It's chaos. You know what I mean? Like I guess, okay, let's say you compare like Bitcoin to like the agricultural revolution. Mm-hmm. Like the agricultural revolution was probably a net positive for society, right? I don't know, like just being able to like produce large amounts of food to provide for a population and not starve over a winter and all these kind of things. But with that came like a period of immense human suffering and like issues with nutrition and all these sort of things. Like we had to totally restructure humanity around that revolution. Yeah. And it's like, okay, did we do that or did that happen to us? Like, I don't know, is this something we chose or is this just something that happened? Like, did it even require some person, like however many thousands of years ago, being like, I think after we like learn how to farm, shit's gonna be fucking crazy, It's like, does it require visionaries to happen? You know what I mean? And I can't.
It doesn't.
Right. It's like, can we conceptualize like positives and negatives on a way of being like, I'm bullish, which is a good thing. It's like maybe bullish is like, I don't know, like this nebulous term that comes with pros and cons. Like if you're truly like Bitcoin's going to win, that doesn't like, that's going to come with a lot of like upheaval as well. Right.
Yes.
I mean, every time a major currency has fallen, it's been an epochal, like chaotic event, right? Like the Roman currency falling, like the, transition from the pound to gold to the dollar, right? These are like uncomfortable events that brought a lot of pain. And I don't even think those were really like, this is the first time that we have this world currency, the dollar, that is going to fall, right? And that is going to be a period of a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is currently falling. It's doing one of these
in the death throes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're lucky we have, but
imagine if we didn't have it.
Oh my god!
What would this pod? We'd be too sad to even do a podcast.
Well, I mean, like again, like it's like the dollar is doing this no matter what.
Exactly.
So hence why the prepping is appropriate.
Yeah.
And then it's like, how much are you focused on prepping versus Bitcoin? Because like again, it's like if Bitcoin wins, like. With $1, you're probably buying like a very comfortable lifestyle with the Bitcoin.
Sure.
Like if Bitcoin works, but you got to get there, And again, like there's another thing I'm trying to like smith, but it's like I think we're getting pretty close to like the top of how much Bitcoin this group of Bitcoiners, people that identify as Bitcoiners, have. Like I think we're getting to the peak of our sat count, which seems a little like counterintuitive. because I think that like none of us are prepared for the fucking shit show that's coming.
Like losing.
Yeah, I just don't think we're gonna get there across with all our sats.
Yeah, whether that's like you or like your seed phrase or your like whatever.
Well, we're gonna lose it, or we're gonna spend it, or we're gonna get killed.
Not bullish enough, get killed, get extorted.
Yeah.
You know, when I say not bullish enough, I mean like you traded too early because you didn't like size up the potential.
Yeah.
I mean, like you look at the Roger Veres. You know, at one point you think that he had like if Bitcoin wins, like he's gonna be a mega god, right? And he found a way to like now he's like insolvent.
Now he's like doing some degen leverage shitcoin trading,
like,
and he like has some loan he can't pay back, like.
Getting across with your stack intact, I think, is a underratedly difficult task.
100%.
And like a lot of people should focus more on that versus building their stack, because their stack is like, not saying stop building your stack, but it's about your focus.
Right.
It's about like where you're allocating your energy. Like if you could just get what you have right now across the finish line in Bitcoin works, you're probably good. Yeah. Like if you have like beyond the decimal point on the Bitcoin, you know, multiple Bitcoin, like
you're set.
Yeah.
If Bitcoin works, like you should be good. Yeah. You know.
So what's your prepping strategy? Like you got a compound in Montana that you're like.
Oh God! I mean, I have a passport that's not expired right now. I have friends across the globe. My wife speaks Spanish. Like, I mean, I'm not doing that great, to be honest. So, but like, maybe I should eat my own. You know, I should eat
your own dog food.
Take my own. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. I could be doing better. But I really do think like this is the mentality that we need to be on.
I think it is like, I mean, as the resident prepper, I think it is about knowing yourself. Like for me, like I have leaving the US is like my last resort. I don't want to leave at all. And so for me, that means like hunkering down and like being like a homesteader. But there's
this is one of the best countries to have that strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Like
other countries, it's not a good strategy.
I'm not leaving. Yeah. So for me, it's like, I know I'm not leaving unless I really absolutely fucking had to. And even then I think I'd just drive north or south depending. And so for me, it's like, I'm like, I do like the homesteading stuff. I like focus on like food and like my supply chains and all these sort of things. And like if I had to be mobile, where would I go? And like what's a good spot to be and like all these sort of things. But some people are more like international and mobile, and they're happy to like be like, okay, how can I optimize so that if I need to, I can go somewhere else. I can do whatever. I can be an international citizen of the world, whatever kind of thing. I think it's like, it's about knowing yourself and realistically like, where are you able to be flexible and where are you going to be inflexible, and how can you like optimize for the potential outcomes that you see happening, which is going to be, it's going to be dependent on you, your family, where you live, what you do for work, what the like risks are in your area. Like, you know, it's just survive.
Could not have said it better myself. Yeah. I think you nailed it.
Yeah. It's, you know, survive to hyperbitcoinization.
Exactly. Like that's the name of the game. It's like, you want to get as many sats across the finish line, but like, how are you going to do that?
I think that's a good phrase. Get your sats across the finish line. It's like, you probably have enough sats. Not saying you don't need to keep stacking. Keep saying, you know, do your thing. Keep stacking. Bitcoin's low right now.
Responsibly. It's a good time to stack.
Yeah, right. But how do you get across the finish line to hyperbitcoinization? Because there's a lot between us and that.
Yeah.
And like
a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. I started working on a second passport a while ago. I started working on an Israeli passport because I'm Jewish, and they'll give Israeli passports to Jews, even
to the right people,
even really nominal Jews like me. And I kind of stalled out because there's some things I got to do. I got like partway in the process. I got a kosher certification that I'm Jewish. Like it's like I'm like prime beef. But I think I'm going to take it across the finish line and get that second passport.
See, there we go. That's what I'm saying. We're making some practical steps.
To
get across the finish line to hyperbitcoinization.
Yeah. Although, like, man, I mean, like, if like the U.S. and Israel, like, I don't know, maybe I want to diversify a little bit.
Diversify your passport portfolio.
Yeah. I want a very like politically irrelevant country's passport. You know.
Well, the nice thing about being a Bitcoiner is that you can always buy that El Salvador.
Right.
And honestly, like I'm a huge fan and reader of The Sovereign Individual, and I use a lot of.
Maybe that guy is bullish enough. Do you know The Sovereign Individual?
No.
It was this book. Do you know who wrote it? The guy's name?
There's two people, Lord Edward Mogg and God, what's the other guy's name? as someone who's a huge fan, I should know their names. But it's relevant. The ideas are on the paper, and their ideas are fantastic.
But it's very much a like almost like predicting hyper-Bitcoinization.
Well, no, the book is about hyper-Bitcoinization.
Oh, didn't the song?
No, it's pre-Bitcoin. But I'm telling you,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It came out before Bitcoin.
Oh, word.
But it says like the world is getting like more integrated. Like we have like more like information, personal mobility. Individuals are able to like control their own destiny more and more and more and more. And we're going into there's going to be a phase change where you are going to be a sovereign individual, right? Mm-hmm. It almost really predicts hyper-Bitcoinization, right?
I mean, they talk about how many sovereign individuals there will be. So individuals that make their own rules. Mm-hmm. Like they're not like right now we live in a sovereign nation and we live above, we live within that sovereign nation's rules.
We're just the plebes.
So
we get a plebiscite every once in a while.
A sovereign individual, so someone who makes their own rules and kind of operates kind of amongst their rules, and they're able to negotiate like with states effectively.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe they are a state, themselves. Yeah. So the book predicts 100 million sovereign individuals. So just, if you want to get a sense of how bullish they were, there's less than 100 million
how many,
Bitcoin. There's only 21 million.
It's interesting to compare that number to how many people practically can own their own UTXO. How many people practically can control their output? It might be around 100. How many? I'd have to think about that. It's an interesting question. Like, because the granularity currently for Bitcoin, the granularity of self-custody is, one person controls one UTXO, roughly. So maybe that is the granularity of like how many sovereign individuals can there be? How many?
Are you sovereign enough to even have
control your own
UTXO?
Yeah.
So that's how bullish you should be.
Yeah, because
that's so. None of us are even close as bullish as enough if that's how it's going to go.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that with our current technology and the current level of thought that's been put into Bitcoin and the current level of demand and need on a UTXO, that's the current limitation.
Right.
So
we'll
never know what the future limitations will be and what our ability to work around those limitations are.
As the demand for block space goes up and fees increase, we can start increasing, and as technology permits, we can start increasing the block size, and like once we have that like solid demand for fees. So probably the number of people, in addition to like additional technological improvements like coin pools and like other things that allow like multiple ownership of the same UTXO, like we should be able to expand the number of people who can control their own UTXO for sure.
I'm bullish.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna go up.
Yeah.
I'm bullish.
Yeah.
Which is both a positive and a negative.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's like, hey, we're bullish on Bitcoin, ultimately bullish on human freedom, but things usually evolve in peaks and valleys. 100%. So there's like this evolution.
There might be a pretty dark valley coming up. Like the real, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Then they fight you might be kind of bad,
Yeah.
Well, Bitcoin will win. But Bitcoin is anti-fragile. Bitcoiners, Bitcoiners were very fragile,
right?
And we need to harden ourselves.
We need to touch some grass.
Wow, that's a perfect way to bring it full circle there.
Yeah. We're at a good time right now. So should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
No, I think we hit on everything.
Yeah, CK, this was a great conversation.
Yeah, great to have you. I feel like I was not bullish enough before. And now I'm like still not bullish enough, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, you're thinking about your Israeli passport.
Yeah, Israeli passport. Exactly.
It starts with admitting, and once you can acknowledge that you're not bullish enough, you can start your journey to.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Casey, and I'm not bullish enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's the AAA version of that for not being bullish enough?
Yeah, exactly.
Bears Anonymous.
Yeah. Bears Anonymous. Yeah.
Yeah. Word. All right. Well, thank you, CK.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the pod.
Bless up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bye everybody.
Stay bullish.